Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Prompt, the Systems Unlimited podcast. This is Katie Cummins. I'm so excited to welcome you to the podcast. With me today is my co-host, Kathy Brooks. Kathy, how's it going?
It's going good, Kate. Thanks for asking.
So we just wanted to record a quick introduction to the podcast. Kathy, do you remember how long ago did we throw out the idea of a podcast? It was in staff development committee, right?
It was, but I think maybe on some level you've been plotting this planting of a seed anywhere that it may take root. And so I think it's probably been much longer than just a year or something that we talked about it at staff development committee.
I do love a podcast. I mean, I'll listen to a 5-hour podcast. I'm in for that. Luckily, we're not planning to have any of our episodes be 5 hours long. We're shooting for between 30 minutes and an hour, sometime in there. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah, we want people to be entertained.
Yeah.
Not, like used for sleeping.
Well, or, you could be out for a long walk. Who doesn't want a pod?
I guess we'll find out.
So how did the idea come about? I think we were originally talking about some people were going off to a conference and in staff development committee, which for those of you who don't know, we do a lot of stuff with training. And we were thinking about how can we get those ideas that just a small group of people get to go learn about? How can we bring that back to the agency as a whole? And we threw around different ideas, and then this idea came about.
Yeah, I think that is the story you want people to believe. Yes.
What do you mean?
I mean, I think you maybe tried to pilot something about cats and it wasn't picked up for syndication, and you're like, all right, backup plan. Hello, systems.
I have been trying to figure out how many episodes we need to wait to have a cat-centric podcast. Meet the cats and systems. God, it's going to be our best one.
Right.
But the idea really is to have a podcast where, one of the things that's so cool and difficult about systems is that we have about 1,000 employees and we have about 100 different work locations. So we so rarely get to all be in the same place. Really, we never get to all be in the same place. And this is just a way to maybe offer to bring the community closer together.
Absolutely. I think regardless of the topic or topics, and we've brainstormed a few that we would like to try out that we think people might be interested in, it really is about creating connection and camaraderie because we are spread out. And I think it can be isolating at times. So we're hoping this podcast is maybe more of a home base for people than even the office locations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have our first episode, which we're going to talk about in a second, but the first episode was easy to figure out what we were going to do with. The question is what comes next. And Kathy and I have a few ideas. One of Kathy's in particular I'm very excited about. But I think we'd really like to hear from our staff about what they think could be a good use of the podcast. So staff, if you're listening, keep your eyes peeled because we do plan to send out a survey via agency email and Teams, which everyone working at the different houses has access to. We're going to send out a survey to get your feedback for the pod sometime soon. So just keep your eyes peeled for that because I think I speak for both me and Kathy that we want this to be something that everyone can get something out of. And to do that, we really need to hear from you.
Absolutely. And just like the awesome name of the podcast, it came from outside staff development. It came from outside us. We certainly know that people have really great ideas, and we would love to, not take credit for them, but bring them to life, bring them to fruition.
Absolutely. And I think one thing we want to focus on is making sure that we have diverse voices on the podcast. I don't know that our first episode necessarily represents that in like a traditional sense, but we definitely want to move that direction going forward.
Absolutely.
Speaking of our first episode, do you want to tell people what it is?
I mean, I'd really like to create a contest where people could guess, but we don't have time for that. It's time to drop this episode. But what better than a kind of personal profile, casual interview with our newer CEO, Mona. She's been in the job a little over a year now, and she is somebody that is quite likable. Anyone that meets her really enjoys working with her. She's got a really interesting history, but we know not everybody has the opportunity to get to know the CEO or come to the office and have time to chat with her. So bringing her into this opportunity so she can share a little bit about her background and you can get to know her better, as well as the vision she has for the agency, just seemed like the perfect place to start.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked with her for years, and I learned so much in our conversation, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. So we've let a few people listen to the episode so far. The feedback has been very positive. We just hope everyone really enjoys it, and thanks to Mona for being our first guest. I think without further delay, we can probably segue to that first episode of the podcast.
I think it's time. Cue the drum roll.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kathy. Bye.
Thanks, Kate.